from each happily ever after, every wish upon a star. Let's break down the movies that shaped who we are, from memory lane to now and everything in between. The most famous of films to the ones we've never seen. Decade by decade, all the times we laughed and cried, and with a little pixie dust, they will all take flight, reliving the feelings, and we're trying our very best. And if they mean the same to you, please be our guest. So hop aboard, we would love to have you as we hang with a certain mouth, the whole gang too. If you love nostalgia stuff, we hope this does the trick. Thanks for joining us as we deep dive the magic.
Hi, and welcome back to the Deep Diving the Magic podcast. I'm KJ.
And I'm Jeffrey. And we are back today with the 73rd Disney feature-length film from August 29th, 1964. And as we mentioned at the end of our last episode, we do have a doozy for you this week. We do have the film that they can say changed it all. Again, the 73rd Disney feature-length film from August 29th of 1964 is Mary Poppins. But before I go into the slew of the lovely cast of this film, would you like to start us off with the synopsis about Mary Poppins?
In turn of the century London, a magical nanny employs music and adventure to help two neglected children become closer to their father.
Yeah, there's so much more involved with this film than just that synopsis.
I think that gives you overall.
Any opening thoughts that you want to talk about before I go over everything?
No.
No? All right. So obviously there is quite the famous cast of this. There's Julie Andrews and Dick Van Dyke, who are both not only making their Disney debuts, they're also making their acting debuts off of the theater. Walt was so excited about having Julie Andrews that he passed over many famous actresses, and he waited for her to give birth to her child before filming started. We have David Tomlinson, who will be in some films coming up, and then we have Glynis Johns, who are the parents. We met Glynis Johns 10 years earlier in the film Sword in the Rose. We have Karen Dotrice and Matthew Garber, who are the Banks children, who we just recently met in Three Lives of Thomasina. And then there is a whole slew of people that have been in many movies already, including Ed Wynn, who we know has been in a lot of our films lately. He loves to laugh. We have a lot of voice actors. We have a lot of, there's even somebody in here who was the narrator of Cinderella. There's also a lady who plays in this who I thought was pretty interesting. She was the Emperor in the Star Wars trilogy, which I think is pretty interesting. But yeah, so this film is just known for its fantastic cast. Obviously, there's some famous songs by the Sherman Brothers. And it is based on the P.L. Travers book Mary Poppins as well from her book series. I know Walt had he tried to get this for 20 years, and P.L. Travers was not supportive, and she ended up famously hating the film, hating the casting, and hating the songs. But this film did get a lot of critical acclaim and commercial success. Won 5 Oscars. It's also selected to be preserved in the United States National Film Registry of the Library of Congress as being culturally, historically, or aesthetically significant. I think it's actually all of those. It ended up winning the number 6 spot on the American Film Institute's of the 100 greatest musicals of all time. And then the last fact, the most important fact before we dive into this, I would say, is that this is also my mother's favorite Disney film. So that's a pretty important fact.
Probably also one of your favorite films.
Yeah, I mean, we'll get there on this for sure. So anything else you want to talk about before we dive in? Do you have any facts about I know you were doing some research on P.L. Travers or some stuff like that or anything?
Well, like you mentioned, she did not like the movie. It was the film debut for Julie Andrews, and Walt Disney did fight for 20 years to get the rights to this.
Which they made a movie about that we'll cover in many years.
Yep, and it did win 5 Oscars, like you said. That's pretty much all I got.
All right. So, you ready to dive right in?
Sure.
All right, so all of our friends at home, grab some popcorn because this might be a long one. So we start off with we hear some the instrumental version of "Feed the Birds" and "Spoonful of Sugar." We see some London. We see like the London landmarks and the skylines in the opening credits. Um, Towards the end of the credits, we see Mary is sitting on a cloud, and some more songs continues. She has her bag, she has her umbrella, she's doing her makeup. We then see Dick Van Dyke's character, whose name is Bert, and he is a one-man band performing in the park.
Mm-hmm.
Would you go see a one-man band? Got like the drum on his back and the accordion and everything.
I guess.
Yeah. Um, he stops singing because he notices that the wind is in the east, and something is brewing, and something that has happened, that has happened before.
Mm-hmm.
He then breaks the fourth wall and he talks directly to the viewer. He talks directly to us,
Mm-hmm.
talking about 17 Cherry Tree Lane, to which he then takes us to Cherry Tree Lane. So it basically is like we were asking him, "Hey, can you take us to 17 Cherry Tree Lane?" So he takes us over there. On the way, we see the house of an admiral of the Navy who fires a cannon off of his roof every day at the same time because he's important for punctuality, they say.
Mm-hmm.
How do you feel about this admiral and his cannon? And imagine living next to that.
I think it would be very annoying, and he would not be one of my favorite neighbors, but I did enjoy his house.
Yeah, one point he was like coming down on the boat. Like,
Yeah, I enjoyed the house and its nautical theme, but would have despised living beside him.
so we get
Only
over.
because of having to hold everything
Yeah,
valuable down every
they
so often.
every at least he's punctual.
Yeah.
We get over to 17 Cherry Tree Lane, which is the residence of George Banks Esquire. And then we see that the family cooks are arguing, and the new nanny is quitting already because the Banks children have run away again.
For the fourth time.
The fourth time in this week. Yep. We then meet Mrs. Banks, who is Glennis Johns, like I mentioned earlier. She's singing a song about the suffragette and the women's rights meetings. She
blows my mind.
Why is that? Go ahead.
She sits here and she's supposedly fighting for women's rights, but she seems like a complete airhead and knows nothing. And then preaches all of this women's right, and then like as soon as her husband comes home, he's the exact opposite. He's the embodiment of the patriarchy, and she is supporting it. And I just wanted to be like, lady, go crawl in a hole.
Hey, she's fun.
Because she's an airhead.
Okay. So she sings the.
I just want to say that watching this as an adult, I really saw it. But from watching it as a child, I did not remember her.
She's one of my favorite characters.
So somehow, from childhood to now, I had blocked her out.
Well, she breaks into the powerful Sister Suffragette song. This is where we find out that the children have run away for 4 times this week. But then they all stop what they're doing because the cannon's going to go off. So they have to like protect all their stuff, like you said. We then see Mr. Banks, who is arriving home from his job in the world of finance. He breaks into a song about how pleasant the life is that he leads. But he gets home to find out that his children are missing, so he rings the police. He picks up one of the phones, like in Magic Kingdom, like the receiver, something separate. And he is calling the police because again his children are missing. He finds out. So then the police have
time out.
Go ahead.
Is that phone still there, or did they get rid of it?
I don't know. Yeah, I mean they redid
COVID.
the whole confectionery thing, so it was in the corner of the confectionery. That's where the popcorn stuff is now. So it's on the wall there. So unless they moved it,
okay. I was just wondering.
Yeah,
okay.
It's like the receiver comes off the wall and you like talking to it.
Yeah, I remember it. I just don't remember if it's still there or not.
But at the same time that he's calling the police come to return some of Mr. Banks' valuables that they found in the park, and that is his children, Jane and Michael Banks. And basically the cop says that it wasn't them that ran away, it was their kite that ran away. So basically their kite flew off and they
basically he was telling them be nice.
Yeah.
Like it was just a child having fun and didn't realize what they were doing.
Yeah. So this is where we learned that in the last 4 months they've gone through 6 failed nannies. So Mr. Banks decides, Mr. Banks is a very stern gentleman, and he's like, "All right, I'm going to take this upon myself to pick out the next nanny." He's going to put an ad in the paper, and he sings a song about all the things a nanny needs and all the strict qualifications. But then at the same time, the children come down with an advertisement that they wrote for a new nanny. They sing an adorable song about a nanny and with a cheery disposition. But after they go back to
With
bed,
rosy cheeks.
yep, they basically describe Mary Poppins. But after they go to,
What kind of child puts that down as a demand of their nanny?
I mean,
She
these
must
are the
have rosy
Banks
cheeks.
children. They're wonderful. But after they go back to bed, Mr. Banks tears up the kids' letters and he throws them into the fireplace. But then in the background we see like a perfectly timed wind blows them up and out the chimney. And then we see the admiral on top of his roof talking about how the wind has changed, kind of like Bert was talking about earlier. And then it cuts to the next morning, and there's like a line around the block of nannies wanting the job. Which and all these nannies are not what the kids had advertised, or all what Mr. Banks had advertised. But then a giant, heavy windstorm comes and begins to blow all these nannies away.
Imagine the turbulence.
Imagine. So
if it could blow people away.
This giant windstorm comes and they blow all the nannies away. So basically, even before this, Mr. Banks opens the door and he's like, "No, I'm not letting them all in until 8 o'clock." There's like a line around the building.
Punctuality.
So then, but then a heavy windstorm comes and blows them all away, and one by one, while the children watch on in shock, they see that there's like a lovely lady floating from the sky with her umbrella. They think that she's a witch, but it's the person who answered their advertisement. It is the one and only Mary Poppins. So then it becomes 8 o'clock. So Mr. Banks is like, "All right, let them all in one by one," and they open the door. The cook opens the door, and there's only one person standing there, and it's Mary Poppins. So she like lets herself in. She already knows the children's names. She refuses to give references, but she explains how she meets all of the children's qualifications. Mr. Banks is very confused. He's even like recreating, ripping up the paper, and he's trying to figure out in the fireplace and everything.
She asks him if he's sick.
Yeah. She says that she will give them 1 week trial period, and then she just basically forces her own employment. And then, much to the children's shock, she sits on the banister, I guess it's called, like the railing, and she like rides it up the railing, up the stairs, and then she tells Michael to close his mouth because he's not a codfish. But you know who is a codfish? Captain Hook from Peter Pan. Remember, he's a codfish. He said it himself. That's a second codfish reference. Mrs. Banks is shocked that they already found a nanny so quickly. So she tells the cook to like dismiss all the other people outside. But then when she opens the door, it's just like a little dog. I forgot the dog's name. Andrew, I think, is maybe the dog's name.
It is.
It's just like sitting out there by himself.
And he gets dismissed.
Yep, they dismiss the dog, and then cook is very confused. I would love for
the dog to have been the nanny.
I mean, that didn't work great in Peter Pan. Wow. So the kids show Mary her room by the nursery, and then she pulls out her like carpet bag, and she opens the bag, and in that she pulls out the hat stand. She pulls out a mirror. She pulls out a plant. A full size stand up light like out of the bag, and the kids are just shocked that like how did all this stuff fit in this bag. They say to keep an eye on her because she's tricky. So my handwriting wasn't not the best on this one. She pulls out this like tape measure to like measure how tall the kids are, and like, but it like as it measures them, it talks about like, it like describes them in words. I forgot, I don't know if you
like
want
qualifications.
Yeah, like but then the kids have Mary like measure herself, and then it says Mary Poppins, practically perfect in every way. They play a game about tidying up the nursery. Because in every job that must be done, there's an element of fun, and they sing the Spoonful of Sugar song. Even the birds sing along, and it's here that I realized that if you remember my take all the way back from the first deep dive we did, at least Mary has a much better singing voice to the birds than Snow White did, because Snow White's singing voice to the birds was not the best back then. They snap their fingers, and then every single time they snap their fingers, something else cleans itself up. So Michael's like trying to like figure out how to snap his fingers to get his stuff, but then he gets
That's his heart. Do you know how much faster they could have done that had he figured out how to snap?
But then he does, and then everything just keeps moving all crazy, and he gets stuck in the closet. And this is where I wrote down the first time that this film must have been so much fun to film for Julie Andrews. And then after the room is clean, Mary and the Banks children they ride the railing down the stairs. This time they're riding down the stairs, and they are leaving for the park. And then in the park we see Bert again, and he's singing the Chim Chim Marie song. Well, the beginning of it. And he's painting on the ground, like he's like chalk painting, I guess is one way to put it. Like all these like lavish, wonderful pictures on the ground.
It's like he went to Epcot during the art festival.
And then he again talks directly to the viewer, and Mary Poppins sees him, recognizes him. The two know each other, and then they reunite. And then the kids and Bert are like dancing around, and they want to go like inside of the pictures, but Mary like is not having it. But then she begrudgingly takes them magically into one of Bert's ground paintings. They like jump up and they go into the picture. It's kind of like a field with like a road and stuff, like a country scene. And then the next thing we see that they're in the picture, and it's like a nicely drawn country scene. Like I said, they're all nicely dressed. They whimsically sing.
She tells them not to fall and smudge the picture.
Yes.
Not to fall and get dirty. Just don't fall and smudge the picture.
They whimsically sing the Jolly Holiday song, which is a wonderful song. And we then see, as they're dancing around, there's like some hand-drawn and colorful animals. A lot of the voices that I mentioned earlier. Some of these animals look like they're from 101 Dalmatians. The animals, they join in to sing. And this is where I wrote that this film must have been just as fun for Dick Van Dyke to film as it was for Julie Andrews to film. They dance around in a beautiful, colorful scenes. They ride turtles. Like they're just having fun. This is where the famous penguin waiters scene comes up, and then the penguins dance around with Bert. And then the children who are riding a merry-go-round. I'm sorry, like these like fancy like horse merry-go-rounds. They're sitting on the horses, and then Mary and Bert get on it too, and they end up, the horses like come off the merry-go-round, and then they're having like a horse race of these horses, which would be a perfect like Disney ride if they did something like that for this. I mean,
they did.
Yeah,
it's the carousel right behind the thing.
Yeah, but no, that's not her horse, but it's okay.
No, but it's still, that's a reference.
No, it's not.
Yes, it is.
No, it's not.
Yes, it is.
No.
Keep going.
They owe a lot. They owe a lot to this film, and there's no Disney ride for it. So,
well, there was supposed to be.
I know COVID happened, but so Mary, of course, wins the race after some more fun hijinks, and then she's being like interviewed, and the reporter asks her, what is there a word to describe her win? And this is where she says supercalifragilisticexpialidocious. Now tell me, I counted this. How many letters? What's your guess?
26.
34. Okay. They all burst into the fun song about the biggest word they've ever heard. And then it's at this point that a doozy of a Disney storm comes and washes away the painting, causing them to transmit back to the park. And then this is where I wrote, good thing Mary has that famous umbrella, because it was raining. Back at Cherry Tree Lane, Mary makes the children take medicine because they've actually been stuck out in the rain and they're wet. So she's wanting to get sick, but the kids like don't want to take the medicine. But then the medicine changes colors and it changes flavors, and they all love the flavor of the medicine. Yeah.
So she pours it into each spoon, and every spoon she pours it in is a different color.
And I don't want to like touch this. Do you have like
facts? Was rum punch.
Do you have like the facts about what the kids know or didn't know written down?
No.
So I watched a documentary on this yesterday, actually, and the kids had no idea that she was going to pull the things out of the bag, and that the medicine was going to change colors. So like their actual reactions were like their real reactions and not like scripted. Mary calls something a pie crust promise. She says, don't make a pie crust promise. This is Those are easily made and easily broken, which I've never heard before. Like, that's actually a really good analogy.
Makes sense.
And then the kids like want to talk about the day, but Mary's like pretending that she doesn't remember anything from the day. And the kids are all too excited to sleep, so then she sings them a lullaby about like staying awake, like a stay awake lullaby, which makes the children fall asleep.
Yeah.
Mary Poppins may have the whitest teeth I've ever seen in my entire life. They are so unbelievably white in this film. The next morning, everyone is excited. There's like everyone's singing and excited about Mary Poppins. Everybody except for Mr. Banks. Mr. Banks he is not having it. It's giving him a headache. Of course, his neighbor's cannon isn't helping the headache. He is just over the cheeriness. Whatever. She takes the kids out for a walk, or they're going to the park. I don't know what they're doing, or whatever they're going to do. But they go outside, and then Andrew the dog starts barking, and Mary understands what the dog is saying. And he's like, "What he is? We got to go save him!" Like whatever. So they
were supposed to go to the store and buy fish and stuff.
That's what it was. They were going to buy fish, but the dog barks, and she understands what Andrew's saying. So they end up going to the closed bookstore where Bert is already there, and they're concerned for somebody. So they go into the back room, which is where we see Uncle Albert, who is our friend Edwin, who is of course laughing because all of this dude does in Disney movies is laugh. But he's laughing so much that he's floating. He's floating in the air. They sing a whole song about it. Like this actor he's laughed more than any character ever. Like this dude just laughs in every movie he's in. But they all end up laughing and they all end up floating. They're like telling jokes. He tells them a joke about some guy's wooden leg. Mm-hmm. Do you remember what the joke was?
Not specifically, but it comes up two more times after this.
So he tells them a joke about a wooden leg.
Possibly three more times.
And they all start laughing. They all start floating. But they end up going back to the house on Cherry Tree Lane. Mr. Banks is just not enjoying all this cheeriness of the household. He attempts to fire Mary through a song about tradition and discipline, but she convinces him to keep her, and he also convinces him to take the children to work with him the next day. And
boy, was he not happy about that.
Well, he was confused about how she like tricked him and like played him into that.
Yeah.
So then she sings the children a heartwarming lullaby about like she's holding a snow globe and she's singing them and trying to put him to sleep. It's about the song's called "Feed the Birds." "Feed the Birds" is a personal favorite of Walt Disney. Those Sherman Brothers always talk about how they were forced to play it for Walt all the time.
I'm glad he loves it. It's my least favorite song out of this whole movie, and if I'm not mistaken,
it's so emotional.
I don't know. I just did not. I don't like it. But I think when we were down at Disney the last time we went,
they sang it.
That's the song she sang, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
At the Broadway thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
At Epcot.
It's very emotional.
Yeah, it's not my favorite song.
So the scene cuts to a depiction of an elderly lady feeding the birds on the steps of the cathedral. Mm-hmm. Mary keeps singing the song, but the kids fall asleep. It cuts in the morning. Mr. Banks is bringing his children to his job at the bank, and then on their way, they see this lady on the steps of the cathedral who's feeding the birds. So Michael wants to feed the birds mm-hmm. with the old lady because from the song that Mary sang, but he wants to like spend his tuppence, his money, they call it his tuppence, but Mr. Banks won't, because he obviously works in banking, won't let him quote unquote waste his money on feeding the birds. He's going to take him. He's going to open up his first account with the money at the bank because he works in finance. Mm-hmm. And then they go into this very beautiful bank. As somebody who's a slight expert about these type of things, this bank was gorgeous in every way, practically perfect in every way. Was this bank? Whatever, it was set up great. He introduces his children to his boss and like the elderly very, very elderly chairman of the bank. He tells them about how he um, wants to open his Michael wants to open his first checking account, but Michael is like, no, I want to use my tuppence to feed the birds.
Yeah.
So then the elderly man, who's the chairman of the bank, who's also played by Dick Van Dyke, sings a song about investing his tuppence through the Fidelity Fiduciary Bank and all the wonderful things about the bank.
Mm-hmm.
But Michael's like, no, I want to feed the birds. Like Mary's saying about feeding the birds. I want to save my money to feed the birds. So Michael doesn't want to spend that money that way. So he causes this giant scene because the like old chairman guy like takes the money from him to start an account, and Michael's like causes this whole scene about giving back his money, which causes everybody in this very beautiful but peculiarly busy bank to like be like, oh my god, they're not giving a child his money. So then everybody has a run on the bank to like take their own money out, and it causes like this whole mayhem. It's like this wild slapstick scene of everybody trying to take their money out.
And that, my friends, is how the stock market crashed.
I mean, this could make sense, I guess.
You're welcome. I solved it all for us.
So, but in all the hecticness,
so every time the stock market crashes, some little kids is trying to get his tuppence
out
of the bank.
And there's so much hecticness going on. The children end up fleeing and running away. They end up in like a different part of town. There's like they run from a wild dog. They run from like a scary older lady, but they run into like this filthy like this guy who's like covered in like soot. And it ends up being Bert, who is now doing his chimney sweeping. So he's
Bert.
So far he's been a one-man band dressed like me. He's been sidewalk painter, and now he's doing chimney sweeping. So he's a jack of all trades. Bert takes them home, but he talks to them about that their father's actually a good person. This is where he takes them home. They sing Chim Chimmery together. Mm-hmm. They get back to the house, and this goes back to about her being an airhead, not being there. Mrs. Banks is like, no, I have to go out. I have to go to this women's meeting. Mr. Banks is at work.
Why? It's not like you're contributing anything. You don't know what you're talking about.
She's a sister suffragette.
Yeah.
She wears the sash.
Oh, yeah. The sash doesn't do much if you don't know what you're doing.
She wears the sash. But we find out that it's Mary Poppins' day off, so they end up convincing Bert to watch the children. But then Mary Poppins does show up just as the children like fly up the chimney. So then Mary and Bert join them on in a very fortuitous I can't pronounce that word. Fortuitous circumstance. There you go.
Fortress.
But they pronounce it funny in the film.
They also pronounced advertisement very funny in the film.
They did pronounce advertisement,
and I was just like,
really funny in the film.
Oh, please don't stop saying it that way.
Well, that's just how they
know.
sing it. Fortuosity. That's what it is. Yep, it's a very fortuosity circumstance. But they end up using this opportunity to walk on the roofs. They're like walking from roof to roof. At one point, they use like the chimney smoke to turn it into some stairs. They're like enjoying the view, and then they're joined by a bunch of chimney sweeps who sing and dance. They basically all step in timing. And it's like I wrote that this is pretty much like the original flash mob, because for like 15 minutes they are just dancing. They're doing all this crazy stuff. They are just flash mobbing to the Step in Time song. But then the cannon guy shoots off his cannon and his fireworks, causing everybody, including the other chimney sweeps, to like they're all going down the Banks chimney, all of them. But they're still singing Step in Time. Mrs. Banks joins in. She starts singing about vote for women, Step in Time, because it's just like they're just doing a flash mob. But Mr. Banks at this time returns home to the mayhem. So Bert like causes everybody to stop. They all leave. What was that? To the mayhem?
To the mayhem.
Mr. Banks is fed up. He is done. He's not happy with Mary. But before he can do anything about it, he receives a phone call from the owners of the bank that he has to report to them at 9 p.m. To discuss what had happened earlier, and they regret what they have to do. The children see this and they're all upset that this is all their fault.
It's all the bird's fault.
The bird's fault.
Yeah.
Well,
It's all the bird's fault.
I have bad news about the next film we're gonna watch. Then if it's all the bird's fault.
Keep going.
So then Mr. Banks sings a song about how things being worse since Mary showed up. Bert tries to cheer him up, but he's just not having it. So the children, I love Mr. Banks. He's a jerk though, but
I'm glad somebody does.
The children come to apologize to their father. Michael gives him the tuppence that caused all the problem, and Mr. Banks then realizes, he feels bad, and he starts to be full of regret. And then we see Mr. Banks sadly walking through the city at night to the bank while the Meet the Birds the instrumental song plays in the background. So he's going to get his punishment for the day. He stops at the steps of the cathedral, but the lady and the birds are not there. I laughed because this bank has a doorbell, which I think is wild. He's let in by some Salvador Dali looking man. And then all the people of this beautiful, gorgeous bank, they all work super late because the bank has so many people in it. He meets with the board of older gentlemen owners, and they tell a story about 1773. Do you want to talk about what the story they tell?
Basically, that's when everybody came to rush and get their money out, and it's only happened three times. And
yep. So in 1773, the bank financed the Boston Tea Party. Yeah. Like the bank financed the money for the tea to go to Boston, and then after the people in the lovely city of Boston did the Boston Tea Party, the loan got defaulted on, so that was a run on the bank, and that was the last run on the bank until now.
Ironically, I did read an article the other day. Well, actually, it was an Instagram reel of this place you can go to in Boston. Since you mentioned the Boston Tea Party, and I'll have to look for the name of it, but it is a place where you can go and sample teas, and it's supposedly got the types of teas that were thrown into the harbor. Anyway,
with that dirty water, so it's just like,
and it was like, so you can taste what was thrown in there, and I was like, I wonder if it's salty.
Dirty. I mean, there's songs about songs about how dirty the water is.
That's where my mind went. Yeah.
So whatever. There's that was the last time there was a scene in the bank until today when the bank's children, they very humiliatingly fire him. They even take his hat off and they punch a hole through his hat and put it back on his head.
They ripped his boutonniere off and then just on his lapel. Stuck the green part back on. I was like,
so then Mr. Banks who just got humiliated and fired. He's speechless, but he looks at Michael's tuppence and he just starts to laugh.
Yeah.
He's like, the only word I have for this is supercalifragilisticexpialidocious. He starts laughing, which is confusing the old men. He's like, you know what? I have a perfectly marvelous joke to tell you, and he tells them the wooden leg joke from earlier that Uncle Albert said. And he's just laughing. He's suddenly talking about Mary Poppins. He's dancing. He's laughing. He's like, well, I got nothing else. I might as well just be happy and laughing. And he's having a good time.
Yeah.
So then he leaves, and everyone is so confused. But then the older, the very, very old gentleman starts laughing.
The head of the bank.
Yeah, the guy who played by Dick Van Dyke as well. He starts laughing hysterically at the joke.
He gets it. Finally.
He finally he gets the joke,
which I never got, so I didn't laugh.
Well, it's good because just like Uncle Albert earlier, the old man starts to float, he starts to levitate.
Well, I want to get the joke so I can do that
because of he's laughing, and then so that's the last we see of that. And then on the next morning, we see the Cannon Admiral guy talking to his partner about how the winds are changing again. And then we do see that Mary Poppins is packing up all of her things. She's packing them all back into her giant bag to leave. She's leaving the children. She refuses to tell the children she loves them. She never tells children she loves them. And
what do you think Julie Andrews' children think about that?
I don't know. They were born before this, so
I never told children I love them.
So then we also see that once it cuts downstairs to the main floor, that the police are in the house. They are using that fancy phone because Mr. Banks never came home the night before after talking to the boss.
And he was hysterical.
after talking to the boss. So they're like,
Mhm.
he must have jumped in the river. That's what they keep saying.
And then somebody says they'll never find the body.
Yep. So he must have jumped in the river. They can't find him.
Oh gosh.
So Mrs. Banks is like very, very afraid. But then we all of a sudden start to hear from like afar, Mr. Banks is singing A Spoonful of Sugar, and he's in a very, very cheery mood. He busts in. He is having a good time. Mr. Banks then calls for the children to come down, and he shows them that he fixed their kite.
It's time to go fly kite.
Yep, he fixed their kite that broke in the beginning of the film. They break into the "Let's Go Fly a Kite" song, which is probably my favorite song of the film. The family dances around the house. Mrs. Banks even attaches her "Vote for Women" banner onto the kite. But Mary Poppins is watching all of this from the window. It then cuts to the park where like everybody is flying kites now. Like the whole town is like it's windy again. The winds are changing. That's what the guy said earlier. And so that everybody's flying a kite. But while they're flying a kite, somebody else that's flying a kite is like the elderly chairman of the board guy. Son is also flying a kite, and he tells Mr. Banks that that from laughing so hard at Mr. Banks' joke, his father died. And Mr. Banks is like, "Oh my gosh, this can't get any worse!" Like, and then he's like, "No, he was."
I just want to say, I know this is kind of morbid, probably, but I mean, most people probably want to die in their sleep.
But laughing.
I actually want to die laughing. And I have actually had at least 1 or 2 times in my life where I thought that was actually going to happen. So you've been there once for it.
So long story short, this the elderly chairman dies from laughing.
And I am so jealous.
Stop. And then but they said that the old man was never happier in his entire life. So not only do they give Mr. Banks his job back, but they also promote him. And they give him like the little Pell thing back. And then, but then it cuts to Mary Poppins, who is shown watching the children, and she's sad, and she's like, she's talking to like the bird on her umbrella, like the bird on the handle of the umbrella, who we haven't really touched on yet, and like they're talking back and forth, and she's like, the children didn't even say goodbye. So then she begins to fly away, but then Bert sees her. And Bert tells her goodbye and to not stay away too long, causing Mary Poppins to smile, and then that's the end of the film. So in one way or another, it's a happily ever after, even though the kids are losing another.
But now they don't really need a nanny.
That's right,
because their airhead mom can take care of them,
and their father,
and he'll have something to do with them when they're not at work.
Goes back to what we discussed earlier about how she was able to bring them closer to their family. So go ahead.
What was your favorite part of the movie?
Honestly, I mean, the flash mob is long, but I really like that song. I really like the fly kite song. I really also like the
you can only pick
Feed
one.
a Bird. Okay, Jolly Holiday. The whole Jolly Holiday section when they're like in the painting.
Okay.
What about you?
My favorite is at Uncle Albert's house, just because I love his laugh. I feel like it's very infectious.
Coming up next film too.
It's very distinct.
This is why Alice in Wonderland is so high on my list.
And I love him.
Yeah.
And then I would have to say second runner-up would be where the old man that Dick Van Dyke plays at the end, when he starts laughing and does the same thing. Not as good, but
I love this film. It deserves all of the it deserves how much it changed the game. But I've been talking forever, so I would love to hear your thoughts, your ratings, and your list upon a star, and any facts that I didn't steal from you.
You pretty much stole all my facts, but that's okay.
Oh my god, when you were gone yesterday morning, I watched like an hour-long documentary about making this film, and
and that's how you stole all my facts,
I guess.
Jerk. Anyway, so basically we did cover all the facts that I had. So IMDb gave it a 7.8 out of 10 chimney sweeps.
And you?
I gave it a 6 out of 10 spoonfuls of sugar.
You're out of your damn mind. 6 out of 10.
6
Go ahead.
out of 10.
All right, answer yourself. Go ahead. My mother's watching you right now, so hot seat yourself. This
You know
6 out of
what?
10.
And we still get along. She doesn't like Fantasia. I don't like Mary Poppins.
All right.
I probably rated Mary Poppins higher than she would have rated Fantasia.
All right, so keep going. Keep going.
So,
what's your issue with this film? We've watched it many times.
I don't know. Maybe the deep feminist inside of me is just like
Yeah,
the
but
mom ruins the
I'm
whole
also-
movie.
I'm also a feminist, and the
mom doesn't bother you.
I mean, she's fighting for the cause.
But then when her husband comes home, she like basically, "Bleh, that's not right. Okay, yes, honey. What can I do for you? No, stand up to him.
Wait till you see him in bed and some boomsticks. Okay, so
Anyway.
does this film? Does the wind change for it to float onto your list upon a star?
No, I don't really remember liking it as a child, and I still kind of feel the same about it
How
in
do you feel
adulthood. So
about-
your mom may feel the same about Fantasia if she tries to watch it again.
How do you? She did. How
Did
do
she,
you?
did she watch it? Did she
yeah,
make it
No, she hated it.
again?
So how did we went Fantasia golfing though?
Yeah, we did go Fantasia golfing.
How and my dad won by 1 point. But do you like the sequel? Do you like Saving Mr. Banks? I mean, we're gonna get there in time. But
Saving Mr. Banks, I would have to say I liked it slightly better, but not really.
oh, we'll get there in time.
And then one thing that I found was talking about like how it would compare to the Mary Poppins Returns, but I've never watched that because that was like
We watched Mary Poppins Returns in the theaters.
Did we?
Lin-Manuel Miranda is Bert. We watched it. Came out a handful of years ago.
I know, but I don't remember watching it.
We saw it in the theaters.
Well, obviously,
with my parents.
Obviously, I didn't like it because I don't remember watching it.
Yeah, we saw it in the theaters.
I must have fallen asleep.
You're a horrible person. So what is your list upon a star?
Are you sure we went and watched
100%. 100%. In the theaters. I even know where we sat. So what's your list upon a star?
it? I don't think we watched it. Anyway, so my list upon a star is 101 Dalmatians, The Parent Trap, Sleeping Beauty, Dumbo, Lady and the Tramp, The Three Caballeros, Moon Pilot, The Shaggy Dog, Peter Pan, and Alice in Wonderland.
Emily Blunt plays Mary, and Lin-Manuel Miranda plays Bert. We saw it in the theaters.
I don't think we did.
I am positive. I'm not gonna go by myself. Yeah.
Well, maybe you went with your parents.
Yeah, you were there.
I don't
All right.
recall
So
going.
my list upon a star. This is gonna make my list upon a star. This is the first thing making our list in the last 16 films. So it's been a run, huh?
Yeah. What you gonna? You're gonna knock off the Swiss Family Robinson?
I am gonna knock off the Swiss Family Robinson.
Oh, Tommy Kirk.
Yeah, well, we have another film coming up. One more. So I'm gonna take off the Swiss Family Robinson right here, and I'm gonna do some rearranging. And I am knocking things around, but I'm going over here.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. You're gonna put this above Peter Pan?
Look how low you have Peter Pan.
I know, but for you, that's amazing.
Yeah, so my list upon a star is 101 Dalmatians, Mary Poppins, Peter Pan, Alice in Wonderland, Babes in Toyland, Pinocchio, The Adventures of Ichabod and Mr. Toad, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, Sleeping Beauty, Lady and the Tramp. This movie
You're crazy.
is phenomenal.
No.
Even watching it as an adult, this movie is phenomenal. They owe so much. Like, I am so happy that Walt got to live long enough to see this film. Like, there's some films that I love the lore of. We've discussed this. Wizard of Oz, Willy Wonka, Mary Poppins. Like, that's what makes this film. Like this film is phenomenal. Like,
have you ever read the book?
No. I love musicals, as we know. I'm a musical dude. But so it is now my currently number 2. And I love Peter Pan, so you know that. So
Blows my mind.
so
You don't have a Mary Poppins tattoo
yet. I mean, I like the Lost Boys more than I like any character in this film, but this film in general.
No, that's not how it works.
Yes, it does. So whatever. I can't believe that you gave it a 6.
Hey, that was generous.
And you also
I thought about giving it a 5.
and you also don't remember seeing it the
Well, if that tells you how much I dislike Mary Poppins.
whatever.
I didn't even like it when she returned.
It was good.
I don't even recall it.
But either way, I'm happy about this film. I'm happy that Walt got to see the success of it. But we'd love to hear from you. We are on Instagram. We are on Spotify. We are on YouTube. We are also on deepdiveinthemagicpod@gmail.com. If you want to write in to tell KJ how wrong she is about us seeing this in theaters. Either
Please
way,
tell me where I sat.
The next film we are going over to November of 1964 for the 74th Disney feature-length film in our 74th deep dive, and it is a film that also has Edwin in it, laughing, but it is called Those Callaways. Talk about birds, and we'll take it from there.
Thanks for deep diving the magic.
Bye.
Bye.